Killers of the Flower Moon is not far away from releasing in theatres worldwide, and I've yet to give my thoughts on Martin Scorsese's latest epic. It's been a long time coming, and in the wait for it and seeing all the footage and early reactions, my anticipation levels have only gone up. Everything we've heard about the film, whether it be the Oscar-level performances of the cast, the talented people working with Scorsese, the powerful story that this is based on, or the passion for the source material from the legendary director, has only fueled what we can expect to see later this month. So in this video essay, I'm going to be discussing the reasons why I'm excited for Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. Before I get into it though, if you want to keep up to date on any of my content surrounding Scorsese's latest film when it releases, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. So after quite a long break, Martin Scorsese is back with an ambitious and essential film that he's been working on for a good few years now. After his 3.5-hour gangster epic under Netflix, The Irishman, Killers of the Flower Moon, which will be coming to Apple TV Plus and theatres in October, looks like another classic. Looking at it head on, Scorsese is bringing us another historical-based picture, but aiming to infuse the adapted story with a heavy personal touch. He's reuniting with Leonardo DiCaprio, who previously worked with him on The Wolf of Wall Street, and working once again with his partner in crime Robert De Niro. And add on the extended cast of new faces like with Lily Gladstone, Jesse Plemons, and Brendan Fraser, and you get a film packed to the brim with talent both on screen and behind the camera. The film is a period crime epic based on the book of the same name by David Grann, focusing on the murders within the Osage tribe in 1920s Oklahoma and then the radical FBI investigations that followed. It has a running time of 3 hours and 26 minutes, meaning it's Scorsese's second longest film to date. And after premiering at the Cannes Film Festival, it was met with thunderous reactions across the board. As a Scorsese fan and someone who constantly revisits his classics on a yearly basis, whether that's with Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, Shutter Island, The Departed, or The Wolf of Wall Street, it of course isn't surprising to hear that reviews to the director's latest work include those that call it a masterpiece and one of his very best films. And the footage we've seen of the film already does look to be pointing at that kind of high quality, showcasing its powerful performances, a gripping, moving, and important tale, and filmmaking from a man who just doesn't seem to slow down. He produces highly detailed, rewatchable, and prominent cinema that only a few in this industry can hold up to. However, the question with this film is the same question my video essay on Scorsese got into the other day, and that is, will a film not part of a major franchise on this high of a budget be a success and give hope to more filmmakers with original and diverse work that doesn't seem to get as much support from the audience? Oppenheimer was another example by a distinguished filmmaker that did well this year, so now all eyes turn to Scorsese. Speaking of that budget that I mentioned, it's fascinating that Killers of the Flower Moon is being made on one of almost $200 million. And we know that this budget is going into a roster of very talented individuals. Scorsese co-wrote the script with Oscar winner Eric Roth, who also wrote Forrest Gump. He's further surrounded by a familiar filming crew, continuing his long-term collaboration with 3-time Oscar winner Thelma Schoonmaker, reteaming with Wolf of Wall Street cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto, and music producer Robbie Robertson, who has worked with the filmmaker since the 70s. Add on that mentioned cast, the runtime, and the prestige producers, and you get a film that requires a big budget. But what really calls for an ambitious take is the fact that this story is one one that sounds like it deserves the Scorsese Oscar treatment today. Killers of the Flower Moon is based in the 1920s, where indigenous Americans known as the Osage tribe were brutally murdered for their rich oil shares. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the story, but the key thing to note about it with this adaptation is that there's been a lot of reworking by Scorsese, DiCaprio and co to get the right approach, one that would be much more powerful for the big screen treatment. Leonardo DiCaprio was originally going to play a completely different lead character in reference to Grann's original story, with that approach being a crime mystery thriller at the very foundations. But since Scorsese has done press for the film, he's often said that this original approach wouldn't have been as effective as what they are doing now with the adaptation. He mentioned, "DiCaprio asked me, where's the heart in this movie?" This was when Eric Roth and I were writing the script from the point of view of the FBI coming in and unravelling everything. The minute the FBI comes in and you see a character that would be played by Robert De Niro, known as Bill Hale, you know he's a bad guy. There's no mystery, so what is it? A police procedural, he questions. Who cares? We've got fantastic ones on television. But of course, the new approach by Scorsese and co focuses on DiCaprio's character Ernest, who is De Niro's character's nephew, and his relationship with an Osage woman. The mystery is one that revolves around whether he's just in it to help his uncle benefit in the spoils of the Osage land. Scorsese worked with the Osage Nation while filming the movie, casting indigenous actors as Osage people, and with the tribe's permission today, they filmed scenes on their land. The chief of the Osage, Jeffrey Standing Bear, consulted on the film and said this about the filmmaker. "Early on, I asked Mr. Scorsese, how are you going to approach the story? And he said, I'm going to tell a story about trust. Trust between Lily Gladstone's Molly and DiCaprio's Ernest. Trust between the outside world and the Osage, and the betrayal of that trust, a deep betrayal. And my people suffered greatly, and to this day, this very day, those effects are still with us. But I can say on behalf of the Osage, Martin Scorsese and his team have restored trust, and we know that trust will not be betrayed." So Scorsese is telling a very personal story over just the events that happened. He's focusing more on a relationship at the centre and the idea of trust between two different types of people and how that trust is broken. He's infusing this level of emotion that can really help the audience connect to the story more and feel affected by what takes place. And for a $200 million epic that has this as its foundation, not a franchise and not a film that feels like it's content over the art form, to me, it's exciting whatever way you look at it. The ambition of it is primarily something that really attracts me, especially as someone who is a sucker for event films that either have a true auteur voice at the centre guiding it, or ones that feel authentically grounded in culture and human emotion. Scorsese had come out over the past few years claiming that he thinks a lot of franchise entertainment today doesn't captivate, challenge, or make audiences feel what big original films would back in the day. And he's not saying that a film can't be funny or that franchises can't delve into tropes of the genre, but what I think he is getting at is that popularist stories on screen are just not tapping as much as they could into relatable human stories. Instead, they're relying too much on the content behind them that they are adapting. To add on another point, I'd argue myself that the filmmaking involved is something that can also really contribute to this, and the methods being taken by the big studios are typically leaning more towards the quick form content pattern of TV, or using practices to cheapen or rush the processes of filmmaking. So seeing the director who's critiqued some of these practices make an expensive film on location with a true personal storyline at the centre does really excite me. The same thing happened with Oppenheimer earlier this year, where Christopher Nolan adapted a Pulitzer Prize winning book which covers all the important events of the atomic bomb's film's creator applied his distinct filmmaking style to it for the big screen IMAX treatment and injected a far more personal touch in the story with Oppenheimer's point of view. It wasn't all about waiting and watching for a bomb to go off, it was about everything that led to that and the ramifications for Oppenheimer and everyone else afterwards. Killers of the Flower Moon can do something similar in its own way for the Osage story, and yet tap into Scorsese's familiar thematics of greed, trust, and identity. Of course, any ambitious or deeply human film, whatever the budget, can end up being disappointing subjectively. But just looking inward, the ambition of it, the director's approach to cinema, and the team he's working with, it screams of that art form quality we've yearned for in a time where a filmmaker-driven event film seems to be less prominent in today's times. This year, we may have seen the start of a return to that with successful films like Oppenheimer and Barbie, but after the recent performances of films like The Creator, for instance, Scorsese's movie culture argument is one that I think holds a lot of truth. Still, from a quality perspective, I think Killers of the Flower Moon looks like it could be one of Scorsese's best works to date. And if it is, all I can hope for is that the audience will go out and support it. But that was my video discussing why Killers of the Flower Moon has the potential to be one of Martin Scorsese's best films. Again, the movie could turn out to be either a great film or one of the director's weaker ones, but just going into it knowing his track record, the emotional potential of the material that he's basing his new movie off, and the talent attached to this project, it makes me incredibly excited to see what he'll do with it. The hype that has built up surrounding Scorsese's new film is something that only he and a couple of other filmmakers are capable of right now for a film like this, and if it is great, I just hope that this translates into success for it too. Regardless, everything we've seen tells us that we can expect more high quality work from one of the greatest directors of all time. We'll have to see, but overall, Killers of the Flower Moon is probably my most anticipated film for the rest of this year, now that Dune Part 2 has been delayed. But are you excited for Martin Scorsese's new film, and like me, do you think it could be one of his greatest pieces of cinema? I'm interested to hear what you guys think, so let me know down below in the comment section. For much more videos on Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon when it releases later this month, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.